We are just about. Let's see, I believe we are live. Ba-ba-da. So hi, if it's Thursday, that means it must be a Mighty Blaze Celebrity Conversations. And we're here today with the fabulous Lisa Barr and Julie Clark to discuss Julie's wonderful new book, The Last Flight. So welcome to you both. We're very happy to have you both here today.
Great to be here.
Yeah, signing in from Chicago and LA. So I will do some brief intros for both of you. And then after that, I'm going to let you guys just take it away and have a fabulous conversation about your books and about writing and anything else you want to discuss. So we will start with our interviewer, Lisa Barr. Lisa Barr is the author of The Unbreakables, now in paperback. Raves Brenda Janowitz, The Unbreakables is a sexy and satisfying read about a woman who has no choice but to start over after a massive betrayal. It's an empowering read about love, sex, friendship, and everything in between. Book list raves about heartbreak, passion, and reclaiming one's life. The strength of the novel lies in the way Sophie's emotions radiate from the page. Lisa's previous award-winning novel, Fugitive Colors, is a suspenseful tale of stolen art, love, lust, deception, and revenge on the eve of World War II. It won the Ippy Gold Medal for Best Literary Fiction of 2014. Ippy is fun to say, and was named on Heave Magazine's Top 10 Best Books list. According to Booklist, Fugitive Colors is a masterfully conceived and crafted, dazzling debut that has it all: passion and jealousy, intrigue and danger. But Lisa isn't just a spectacular author. She's also the editor and creator of the popular parenting blog Guerrilla Warfare. I got it right, Guerrilla Warfare, A Mom's Guide to Surviving the Suburban Jungle. Her blog, entitled Being Left Out Hurts, Moms Stop Social Engineering, went viral, viewed by nearly 5 million readers nationwide. Lisa has been featured on The Today Show, Good Morning America, Fox and Friends, and Australia TV to discuss her literary work and how to combat mean moms. And a very fun fact, among the highlights of her career, Lisa covered the famous handshake between late Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the late PLO leader Yasser Arafat, and President Bill Clinton at the White House in 1993. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So great to be here.
We're very glad to have you. Over to Julie. Julie, born and raised in Santa Monica, Julie Clark is the author of The Ones We Choose and the already racking up the raves bestseller, The Last Flight. The One We Choose examines science and family and how they collide when a geneticist's 8-year-old son begins to ask questions about his biological dad, who just happens to be an anonymous donor. But without being too punny, The Last Flight is where Julie Clark really takes flight. Just listen to the accolades. Says the New York Times Book Review, The Last Flight is thoroughly absorbing, not only because of its tantalizing plot and deft pacing, but also because of its unexpected poignancy and its satisfying, if bittersweet, resolution. The characters get under your skin. The notoriously cranky Kirkus Reviews gave it a star and called it a tense and engaging woman-centric thriller. Publishers Weekly, along with Library Journal, also starred it and said the moral dilemmas that the multifaceted, realistic characters face in their quest for survival lend weight to this pulse-pounding tale of suspense. Clark is definitely a writer to watch, and it is a Book of the Month club. Welcome, Julie. We are incredibly glad to have you here as well.
Thanks for having me.
And very excited about your new book.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sounds amazing. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the two of you to discuss. And if there are questions that come up along the way from our viewers, I'll let you know.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. So first of all, speaking, I'm sure Julie feels the same way. Thank you so much. The Mighty Blaze is an amazing venue, especially for authors who are dealing right now with their launch in the middle of all this crazy. So, I mean, kudos to all of you for what you do. Julie, I have a bone to pick with you because, okay, so I am massively in the middle of my edits. So I'm working 10 hours a day, but I am up all night reading your book. And so it is so good. It is so good. And
I'm
I'm loving
sorry. I
it.
know. You
I
shouldn't
know.
be reading
So
while you're
I'm
on
waiting for
deadline.
my apology right here.
Yeah, I mean, you know better. You know
I know.
better. You put
I
the
know.
book down when you're on deadline.
I know. So it's, and I kind of suffer from insomnia. So you're kind of my 3
Oh,
a.m.
good.
go-to as well. So, hey, but anyway, it's been so fun going through things with you this week. And we were kind of looking at some of our commonalities. And the one thing that really stands out, because our books are very different, is we both really focus on reliable female characters. And very important to both of us. And what I have with my characters, Sophie Bloom in the Unbreakables, and in my new manuscript, Jessica Roth, they are both characters who've suffered sort of childhood traumas, but they survive and they thrive no matter what. And what, you know, they almost take those traumas and they fight harder. And I wanted, this is, both of my characters could easily have gone the other way and become an unreliable character. But for me, it's very important, and maybe it's too much information, but I think I draw a little bit on myself. I had a lot of childhood trauma and I just refused to give in. And it was so important for me to survive and thrive. And I know with your two main characters, Claire and Eva, they also have a lot of that. So I thought maybe we'd open it up and talk a little bit about reliable women characters.
Yeah, you know, Claire and Eva are two very different people. Claire is married into a political dynasty family, second only to like the Kennedys. You know, her husband Rory is sort of a beloved national treasure that, you know, young girls used to fantasize about marrying someday. But what they don't know is that Rory is dangerous behind closed doors and he's escalating. And Claire is not your typical abused wife. She is a woman who understands how smart, savvy women can find themselves in an abusive marriage, that it can happen to anybody, and that it happens in small increments over time. It's not just a sudden thing that happens to you. And so there are small instances that are forgiven, and then bigger things are forgiven and bigger things are forgiven. And I really wanted to make sure that I portrayed that in a way that made you realize that, like, this isn't something that happens to a victim. This is something that happens to everybody. It can happen to anybody, I should say. And Claire is not, you know, she is a smart woman and she's, you know, successful in her own right. And so she's created a plan to leave him. She knows she can't walk out. She knows she can't say, I want a divorce. Here's the name of my attorney. She can't do that. The family would never let her leave. It would ruin their image that they've portrayed for so many years. And so she comes up with a plan to vanish. She has the resources. So she gets a new ID. She gets a fake ID. She gets a fake passport. She gets a new name. She's ready to go. And then her plan, of course, falls apart. And that's where she meets Eva, which is the other strong character in my book, who is also very smart, very savvy woman who has had some really bad breaks in her life that have made it so that things just constantly don't go her way. She's maybe not made the best choices. And I think that that's an important distinction, that you can write small, strong female characters who are flawed, who don't make good decisions all the time. Nobody makes good decisions all the time. And we certainly don't want to read books about people who make good decisions all the time. And so making sure that the characters were not, you know, neither of them are unreliable in the sense that we know we can trust them. We know that they are trying to make good decisions inside of some really bad circumstances.
You know, it's interesting because I'm really big on girl code. You know, girl code, my same best friends are the same ones I've had all my years. And especially even right now, women authors, you know, female authors supporting authors, it's so important. And I think in the one scene in your book where they meet, they cross.
Yeah.
Here it was a situation, and this is what I really gravitate to, a situation where They didn't know each other. They sensed the need. They sensed each other needed each other, and it happened. And it was so believable because I really think that's where women are at, and so relevant. And in my book, for example, girl code is broken. It's broken. And Sophie, who's been all about girl code, has to survive it. It comes back in her journey, but that very important girl code, that women helping women instead of women betraying women, is so key. And I really love that in your book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky scene because really Eva is serving her own best interests, and she is manipulating Claire for sure. She wants Claire to believe that changing plane tickets is Claire's idea, but it's really Eva's idea. Eva approached it with that in mind, with that goal in mind, because Eva's in a very desperate situation. But writing that, I needed to make sure that Eva had some remorse about that she knew what she was doing wasn't right, and that she knew that she was probably not being honest with Claire about what was happening and why. But Eva also knew that like this was Claire's last chance too. She kind of had an idea that there was things happening for Claire that Claire wouldn't survive. And so Eva offered this to her, but it was very self-serving. And that's sort of, I mean, and that's really who Eva is. She makes decisions and tries to do the right thing, but, you know, she lives in a world where she's got to look out for herself. You know, it's how she's grown up.
So what inspired you to write this novel? I mean, I'll talk about mine after, but what inspired you to go this direction, to, you know, really create something obviously very different from your first book?
Yeah. Well, I was really fascinated with the idea of whether anybody could disappear from their lives. And I'm a big fan of Ann Tyler's book, Ladder of Years, which I don't know if you know it, but it's my favorite Ann Tyler book. I don't hear enough people talking about it. But it's a story of a mother who is on a beach vacation with her family, and she's so sick and tired of being taken for granted and doing all of the emotional labor of raising these children while everybody else just kind of does their thing and whatever they want to do. And she's sort of left carrying all the bags. And so she heads back to the house to pick something up that somebody forgot. And she's so mad, and she just keeps walking. She just walks straight out of her life and into a new one, and sets up at a town. She doesn't plan on staying long, but she ends up staying a long time and kind of setting up a new life for herself. And so that idea has always intrigued me, because I've always wondered, like, well, could somebody really leave their life, like really truly leave their life, not just, you know, hide out in a small town for a month or so just to make her family miss her? Could somebody really vanish? And so I thought a lot about, well, how could I make somebody, you know, why would they, and under what circumstances would somebody need to leave? And I don't write spy thrillers, so like witness protection was out for me. I wasn't going to even try to tackle that. And how would they go about doing it? So I did a fair amount of research on, you know, fake IDs and passports, and how would you get them? And the Russian mafia is where to go. So they're the best game in town. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun puzzle, which is what I think a lot of books start out for a lot of authors. They're just fun puzzles that you're trying to solve for yourself, and then tell a good story around it to make it work.
Absolutely. I know for me, having the background, I've been a journalist for 28 years. And so for me, whenever I gravitate toward what I'm going to write, there's a news hook. So for my first novel, Fugitive Colors, it was stolen art. And I went 4 years of research before I even allowed myself to write it. And in this one, and so Fugitive Colors, having sort of a Holocaust stolen art background, it was heavy. I mean, it took a lot of blood and sweat and 3 babies and the whole thing. But when I got to this story, I'm sure you may be familiar with the Ashley Madison, scandal. And so for those who are listening who are not, in 2015, Ashley Madison, a site for married cheaters, was hacked, and 32 million cheaters were exposed. And so when I was, that very night that it happened, I was out to dinner with friends, and I thought, oh my God. And for me, when I know I've hit my story, like,
don't you love that? You just know. You're like, that's it.
I was like, literally stop the presses.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what if, and I was out to dinner with friends, and someone had actually brought the lists of in our outlying communities, and I knew 18 different people on this list.
Unbelievable.
And I thought to myself, oh my God, what if my character was there, sitting there, and she hears for the first time, and her husband's there at the dinner, and he's on this list. And so it kind of begins from there. And even though it starts off as a book about infidelity, it's really about a woman's strength in the face of heartbreak and adversity. And in my new book, it's a couple of years ago, the biggest art story took place in Munich. And what happened, it's a kind of, again, a throwback to my first book, but $1.5 billion worth of stolen art, Nazi looted art, many pieces. And we're talking Picasso, Cezanne, Monet, and was found in this recluse in his apartment, like literally in the stove. So I thought, what if I started a story where he's almost like a robber, but the robber was robbed of all those pieces. So I like to bring truth and then tie in a book around it. And it's been really fun. I mean, a lot of research, very intensive, but I feel like it's really inspiring me. I'm sort of a research geek, and I love that part of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've always loved historical fiction. You can tell when it's done well because it sends you to Google to see which is true and which is not,
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's the mark of a great historical fiction book. If I'm madly Googling to figure out, was that person real? Or were they made up?
Right.
Yeah, that's when you know it's done well.
Exactly. So I know one of the things we talked about, we were talking about some of our personal things, and I know you're a single mom, which is the hardest job in the world. And a while ago, I was a single mom raising 2 little girls at the time. And I know for me, a lot of the emotion wrapped in that experience kind of went into
Absolutely.
Unbreakables. And so I wanted to find out from you, which is, just as an aside, your book is a thriller, but it's an emotional thriller. I would say, like, that is the beauty of it, that you really feel these characters. It's not just plot, 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 plot. It's, you really get a sense of these, very interesting women. So I'm wondering from your perspective, how much of you, and, we both were laughing in our conversation earlier, that single moms get shit done.
We do.
And so,
yeah.
And your characters get shit done. My characters get shit done. Is this part of how you tackle your book, your story, your characters?
I think it's how I tackle my life. I mean, as the only adult in the house, there's only one person to do stuff, and that's kind of a nice thing too, because then there's nobody nagging me about, well, are you going to do this? Or when are you going to do that? Like, it's done when I feel like doing it. But I do think that single moms in particular deserve a shout out because we are the ones doing all of that emotional labor, all of that emotional work. We might complain about it a little bit, but while we're complaining, we're still getting it done. And it's just, we don't have time to wring our hands. We just don't. We've got, kids to raise, dinner to cook. We've got, school clothes to buy. We've got, we just don't have time. We need to take kids here, there, and everywhere else. So my characters are both kind of doers, they both kind of look around at the situation, figure out what needs to be done, and then they just get it done. And they make choices that are difficult choices. I don't know that I would trade tickets with a stranger in an airport bar for any reason. I don't think I would have the nerve to do that. But they both are people who will just do what needs to be done in order to get them where they need to go. And I admire that.
Yeah, no, it definitely shows. And I think that's what I'm really loving about it. So the big question that's always asked, and you can talk a little bit about it, is our process. Yeah. And we both discussed we're morning people. I mean, I'm up at 5:15 and I kind of love it. I have 3 daughters and they're all, out of the house right now and in their 20s, but they've been home because of all this COVID.
I was going to say, I don't think they're out of your house, are they?
But, whether they're home or when they were little, it's always trying to find that time. So I think I kind of got really attached to that, like wee morning
Yeah.
time that darkness, and I write my best in the morning.
Same.
No
Yeah,
question.
I'm up at 3:45 and I write
Okay,
from
so you're
4
3:45.
to 6 or 7 usually.
Yeah.
It's quiet, it's consistent, it's the first thing. It's like exercising, you
Yes.
know. People can't, if they don't do it first thing, it's just not going to happen. And that's sort of how it is for me with writing. If I don't get to it right away, then I feel that, oh, I don't really feel like it, or I'm not feeling it, or whatever. But if you just get up and do it, then it's done.
Exactly.
And my brain works better then. Giant pot of coffee. I mean, what better stimulant do you need? You
Yes.
know? Yeah.
And are you, so I'm a hybrid. So I'm just going to start this, but people talk about the, the plotter versus
yeah.
pantser. Plotting is someone who has the outlines, and pantser being, someone who flies by the seat of their pants. So I'm very much a hybrid. I've got a plan. I need to hit certain marks in the book, and my characters take over. And usually things really change. I mean, I have an idea where I want to go, but it changes up. Are you the same or?
Same. I mean, I generally try to do like a 7-point outline just for like turning point, midpoint kind of thing, just to have the beats down of a full story. Yeah. But I generally don't look at it again. I mean, when I try to do it, I draft it out, and then I start writing, and then things happen, and then you don't. I generally I like to outline after I've got a draft, and then I can kind of put it together and outline what I have, and then take it apart and rearrange things. That's better for me. But I've met very few people who are really straight up one or the other. Most people I know are sort of a blend of the two. It's very unusual to find a full pure pantser or a full pure outliner. I just don't think.
I agree with you.
Very rare.
I agree with you. And so I was thinking about this back a little bit to what you said earlier. Is there anything that maybe people wouldn't know that you kind of stick in the book that's a little bit about your life? And the only reason I ask this is in this new book, the other one had a lot of the Unbreakables had a lot of my emotional aspect and things that I experienced in my own marriage in this book. Mm-hmm. But in this one, the character in the Unbreakables, Sophie's in her 40s. In my new book, the main character is in her 20s, which is kind of fun to play a young journalist. And I was able to draw on a lot of my young journalism experiences. But one thing that I really use, and I've never used it before, and I almost haven't ever talked about it, is when I was in high school, I was used as bait to expose a sex trafficking.
Did your parents
site.
Do that?
I mean, let's talk childhood.
Did they know?
But what? Yeah, they knew. I was being used as bait, and we exposed a big sex trafficking ring. And so I was able to draw on that experience. I'd never really talked about it. It was just like one thing that I did, in the past, kind of my first investigative work, so to speak. But I incorporated it in this new book. So my main character, that's almost how she gets her job. She had this experience, and something happened during that experience. So to you, have you put in either of your books anything that was really personal that people may not know about you, but you just kind of weaved it in?
Well, in the ones we choose, it's about a single mom, and I'm a single mom. So I drew a lot on my relationship with my sons to write Paige and her son Miles. Just kind of our routines were their routines, and sort of our conversations were very similar. So I definitely drew on the emotion of being a single mother with that one. For the last flight, it's a little not so much based on me. But I do think I set the book in Berkeley, at the University of California, Berkeley. So go Bears, which most people call Cal. So if people say, Cal, then they're talking about Berkeley. And that's a very special place to me and my history. I worked in the athletic department there for many years after college. It was like going to grad school, but not actually having to do grad school. So it was really ideal for me at that time in my life. And it was a really special place and a really special time for me. And so I set the book at Berkeley so that I could go back, so that I could kind of relive some of the things that I got to do when I was there and relive some of the experiences. But the funny thing is when I started writing it through Eva's POV, who actually attended Berkeley for a while herself, the way she speaks of Berkeley is not at all how I speak of Berkeley. You know, she thinks it's just like, they're just a bunch of nuts. And she's like, oh my God, I hate this place, you know, but I, of course, loved it. So it was kind of an interesting way for me to revisit a place that I loved through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because when I read that part in the book, I was wondering, like, and we had talked about that you went to Berkeley, I'm like, was that her take on it or was it? So that is very interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing just in our conversations that is very similar is that we're both what they call in the pub world genre jumpers, which is, you know, a lot of time it's, you know, looked down upon because if you're a romance writer, very hard to like leave your readers and go sci-fi. If you're, you know, for me, I'm actually genre jumping 3 times. I've gone from historical fiction to hardcore women's fiction, sexy women's fiction, to suspense. And I kind of love that. Like maybe it's like the ADD in me as a writer. Like I need to jump around. I mean, I hope my readers will follow me and will enjoy this, you know, journey, but I like it.
I like to believe that they will.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like for me, you know, I wrote an emotionally driven first novel, and I don't think that The Last Flight is any different. It's still very emotionally driven. So it's just a different plot. You know, my characters were in conflict and maybe not in physical danger in my first book. There were definitely big things at stake. And in the second book, there are the same very, very big things at stake. But I also, I mean, I talked to my agent about that when I was sitting down to write this, when I figured out that this was a thriller, when she emailed me and said, this is a thriller. And I was like, oh, okay. And, you know, I said, well, is that going to be a problem? Because, you know, they always say like, you don't want to, especially after your debut, you need to build up and write in the same genre before you even try to hop. And it's one of the many millions of reasons why I love my agent. She simply said, you write the book you want to write and you let me worry about selling it. And that was fabulous that she gave to me, because I have a lot of friends whose agents are like, absolutely not. You need to write in this genre for at least 3 books before you can leap over to another one. And, you know, maybe she would say that to me at some point, which is, you know, you need to pick a lane and you need to stay in it. But, you know, she really is the kind of agent who just says, you know, you do your job, which is to write a great book. And then just let me do my job and I'll do it and we'll sell it. And, you know, it just really, it's such a gift to have somebody let you do what, you know, tell the story you want to tell, because the story ideas don't always fall into a neat category. They don't always just fall straight into one lane or the other. And I kind of like to think that mine straddles both the like upmarket fiction and the thriller.
Right. And as a writer and as a human, you're growing and changing and experiencing different things. So you do need to be able to, you know, be in your lane and be able to do some, you know, curves out. And I feel very lucky that my agent and my editor get that about me. Yeah. Something fun. So let's just say we leave this conversation and we're going for cocktails. So what writer, dead or alive, would you be having your drink? Sitting where? Where would I find you? No COVID. You don't need any distance at all. You can be in each other's faces drinking.
I want to go back to the days where Barbara Kingsolver and Stephen King were in a band together.
Totally.
That's where I want to be. I want to be sitting in the audience while they're on stage. I'll be drinking a beer, and I want to go back to those days. It wasn't somebody else in that band. I can't remember who.
It's Scott Turow. I think it's Scott Turow.
Right.
Because I had interviewed him way back, and we had a band meeting or something going on.
They had a name and everything. I mean, they had like gigs.
Yes. I think it's like not the Replaceables, but something like that. Something like that.
Imagine like being in a band with Stephen King. I mean, really?
Could you
know?
imagine? Could you imagine?
I mean, stop for a moment and consider.
Oh my God. So for me, I would be in France, in Paris, at Café de Flore in the 20s with, you know, Simone de Beauvoir and Anis Nin discussing literature, relationships, and life. And that's where I would be.
I'm like, I want to be in a bar with Stephen King and Barbara. You're like,
yes.
You know, high literature here. Good.
No, I'd be surrounded by painters and artists and all that literati. That's where I would be.
Both of those sound fabulous.
We're a little different, I think.
I would join you for either.
You would join us, Jane? You
yes, I would love to. I could, yes, you could be the writers that I was sitting down having drinks. So this is a fantastic discussion. It's been great listening to you both and hearing about your process and your books. I'm on team morning writing too. So listening to it, I was like, yeah. So I hope that everyone who's watched will go out and buy.
Tom says that's the name. That's the name. They were the rock bottom remainders.
Yeah, I knew there was an R in there.
Yes. Awesome. That is fantastic. I wonder if any video exists of them. That would be so
cool. But I'd really like to see it.
Yeah, that's great. So I hope everyone will run out and buy Lisa and Julie's books. For Lisa, she wanted to give a shout out to the book stall in Winnetka, the book bin in Northbrook, and Lake Forest bookstore in Lake Forest. And if none of those work out for you, please, we hope you'll buy Lisa's books, Unbreakables or Fugitive Colors, at the indie bookstore of your choice, or you can buy them for our partner bookstore.org to help support independent bookstores. And if, like me, you are now dying to read The Last Flight, you can pick up that and the one we choose at your favorite indie bookstore. And if you buy The Last Flight at Pages in Manhattan Beach, you will get invited to an exclusive backroom book club, right? Did I get that right?
You did, yeah. Pages, it's called Pages, a bookstore, and it's in Manhattan Beach, California, Southern California. And if you buy through them, you can either do that through bookshop.org, or you can do that through IndieBound, or you can just go straight to their website. You can Google them and get their website. You'll get an invite to a backroom book club discussion with me, where we will talk about The Last Flight. It's happening July 7th. It's a very exclusive group, so you have to buy through them in order to be invited.
Very exciting. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you both, Julie and Lisa.
Thank you.
Me and all of us at The Blaze. We're really excited to have had you. And we wish you both best of luck with your books.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.